You know, 22 years ago, I became a Christian. And before that, I was pretty much a hotshot. 7 years of being a secular, quote, rock star. Actually, the last 5 years, I guess you can qualify me as a rock star. I toured all over the country. Did the jets and the limos and all the garbage that went along with the backstage. But that was cool, because I was, bigger the parties, the bigger the success I must be. You know, it's a, bigger the parties, the bigger you must be. And came to the Midwest, and that was really Southern Illinois, actually, and that was really the thing. We were the party band. And the problem was, the parties got to be more important than the stage. Now, we'd go out and kick. I mean, that was our excuse to party. We had to have a good show, get 2 or 3 encores, and we could go and party about it. All right. And I apparently was a little on the light side as far as the brain matter. And I let people tell me that cocaine was a perfect drug. It made you smarter. You couldn't get addicted to it. It was the perfect drug. And I was also told that you can't become an alcoholic on beer. And I believed that because it was convenient. You gotta remember, in the secular rock scene, beer is like water. I mean, at least when I was in the industry, at least in my circles. And it was not uncommon for us to come into the dressing room and we'd have 4 cases of Michelob and 2 cases of Heineken and a bottle of vodka, Jack Daniels. I mean, it was on a rider. That was what you expected. And the cooler was packed full of ice for it. And you'd start in early afternoon doing sound checks, and by the time before the show, I'd already done a 12-pack of beer, and I wasn't drunk because, or at least I didn't think I was, because I was used to functioning that way. Of course, the line of Coke helped too. And it got to a point where my whole life was geared on how much Coke I had. Got these little vials called grams, with little bitty spoons, and you take it to them, and you, all of a sudden you're the Superman. You're smarter, faster, and stupider. Of course, I didn't know that. And I went on this way for like 2.5 years, and I snorted more money up my nose than I've made in the last 2 years with Petra, in about a year period with my old band. And I look back at it now, regretting every minute of it, but I look back now with the realization that the enemy had me totally tied, taken, and I was just going right along with it. In about 1980, I left the band. I actually got kicked out of the band because there was a power play going on, and the keyboard player was a little more slick than I was. And he used contracts and attorneys and got me out of it before I got him out of it. But looking back at it now, it was absolutely a blessing. But when that happened, I was totally freaked out because I had given everything to the band. Everything was more important. I mean, nothing was more important than the band. Everything else came second. My family, my health, everything. Everything. Because the band was my identity. I walked on stage and I was the man. I walk off stage, I'm just Joe Blow with long hair. So when all of a sudden the band's gone, all this time I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm not hooked on Coke, I'm not hooked on beer because you can't. Well, that was the first line they had been using that I discovered because I couldn't give it up. Now there's a problem because it cost a lot of money and I wasn't making any. So in a 6-month period, right after I left the band in like March of 1980 through August of 80, I went on a drinking, drugging binge that was absolutely the most extreme I'd ever done. And went through all the savings that I'd occurred through any money that I'd saved with Head East or anything else. And the time it came, I put my family in total debt. I was still totally hooked on this cycle of doing coke to get up, then doing beer to get down, then doing coke to get up, and and there was that certain perfect spot where I felt really good. Well, 2 years later, and I'll tell you what, remember that certain feeling, okay? Well, it got to a point where I finally, my wife I'm sorry, this is sort of a long story. Got to a point where finally I started passing out on the couch, and my wife finally got fed up and let me stay there. And I woke up one morning on the couch, and my 2-year-old son, actually 1.5-year-old son, was looking at me and looking at me like, "Boy, Dad, you really look bad." He couldn't say that to me, but he could tell his life, like, "Why are you here on the couch? This isn't normal. This isn't my normal life, Dad. Why are you messing it up?" And right there, I said, "You know what? I'm better dead than alive." Because little voice goes, "You know, John, you still have an insurance policy. You haven't messed that up. And it would be probably smart if you ended it. Your wife is still real cute. She'll marry a doctor or a lawyer that's trying to do it right. And they can have good memories about you." And I'm serious. It was like, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, okay. And I started thinking, should I use a gun or pills? And about this time, my 2 kids, my daughter is 5, and my son was about 1. And I'm looking at, they're playing in that room that I'm at, and I go, "No, I'm not going to use a gun and be messy. So I'll use pills." And I had an idea of what kind of pills I was going to get. I mean, it's just a matter of fact. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, yeah, all right. Now, getting back to my wife, that same 6-month period that I went on the final dive, I call it my final dive, my wife gets saved. Isn't that a coincidence? There is no such thing. God's in control of everything. But I want you to know, her getting saved really ticked me off. Because I want, you don't want to sit around in misery and watch your life all happy and joyous, and every time always talking about Jesus, when you want to sit around and be a rock star and feel sorry for yourself and you can find and not feel guilty about what you do. And she comes home from church and it's like, oh, here comes Miss Happy. Okay, she's happy and joyous, and I'm sitting in my misery just loving every second of it, And I make a mistake every once in a while. What world are you living in? Can't you see how disgusting our life is right now? She looked at me and goes, I can tell you what world. I have Jesus. Oh, here it goes. Don't tell me about Jesus. I don't want to hear about it. I'm sick of this Jesus thing. Just get on my face. Because I was too cool to have Jesus. And you have a lot of friends just like that, kids especially. I mean, Christian kids have it tough. Because every time you try to tell, or every time you get an urge to say something to a friend that you really care about, first of all, you've got to overcome the discouragement, the idea of getting it slammed back in your face. And second of all, half the time they're going to say, "Oh, get out of my face, oh, this Jesus thing." And it's embarrassing. And that's what I was thinking. My wife, but she kept trying to tell me, and I'd knock it down, and she'd come back another time and tell me and knock it down. Well, this went on for 6 months, and she was breaking me down slowly but surely. But I was too much of a hardcore. The day I really was sitting there going, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. She comes up to me and says, "John, you promised you'd come and talk to my pastor." "When?" "A couple nights ago when you're really drunk." Well, that makes it real easy, because of course I don't remember the thing. And she's a Christian, so she doesn't lie, so apparently it must have been true. So I'm sitting there going, well, why not? I'll go talk to the pastor, and that way when I commit suicide, she can put on my tombstone, "He tried." Seriously, that was my attitude. I had no hope. I didn't. It didn't matter to me. I didn't believe it would make any difference. But man, we went to this pastor's house, and that pastor was in my face with the boldness about Jesus. And, yeah, praise God. The reason I make a big thing about that is because, hey, I'm an American. I believe in God. I go to church twice a year just like every good American does. Of course I believe in God. But came to me, you know Jesus? Yeah. Wasn't he one of those guys in the Bible? I think, the Son of God. You don't know Jesus. You don't know Jesus that loves you. You don't know Jesus has a plan for your life. You don't know Jesus that knows exactly what you're thinking right now. It's like, and the next thing I knew, man, I was sitting in a corner going, what is hitting me? Comes in, looks at me and goes, you want to know Jesus? Oh. It was the best head shake I've ever made. And folks, I got saved that night. And I got up, and all I remember is looking down at my kids. And I believe the first thing that God ever said to me was, John, all those treasures you wanted to make, all those treasures you wanted to get out of that secular man, all the important things to you, money, riches, treasures, wealth, here they are, right here. And I've been taking care of it for you. Now you start doing your job. It was like, whoa. And it was a whole new perspective. Now granted, I still had all my debts. I still had all the damage that I'd done as far as financially. That had been weighing real heavy on me. And also it was like, no big deal. Jesus and me, we'll take care of it. It's cool. We'll take care of it. And he did. I don't know how he did it, because as far as I'm concerned, it was truly a miracle. I still look back going, all right, now, because I want to find that magic formula, and do it again. But every time a new debt came up, a new need, I'd get a raise, or I'd change jobs, and the job thing was very strange. When I first started getting into the real world, because when I became a Christian, I finally quit all music. All my relatives says, "There's no way. You've been a star too long. You can't give it up. You can't give it up." That was my uncle, real supportive. John, there's no way you'll ever give it up. You can't do it. Oh, really? And I was letting it go and going, oh man, I don't know. And I started teetering, going, well, maybe I should stay in music. Maybe. And finally my wife goes, here's how it is, dear. It's either music or me. But that was so cool because it made it real easy. It was like, well, cool. All right. No decision there. No, that's a no-brainer. Okay, folks, I'm out. And it freaked everybody out. But I mean, the next 6 months, have you ever tried to apply for regular jobs when your resume says rock star, 7 years? That's it. Then you start getting real inventive, going, executive vice president of corporation, blah, 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 manager of, it did work. They saw right through it. I go and apply, I had my 3-piece suit, hair all cut off. I'm working, hello there. It's good to meet you. You seem like fun young man. Let's see your resume. Yeah, right. Close it, says, don't call us, we'll call you, okay? Finally, after about 6 months of trying to find a job, I get to sweep a floor in a tool and die factory. That's it. $4.90 an hour. Guys, about a year before that, I was riding around in Learjets and in limos. I made more money just in per diem than I did my whole day, my first day. But I got a raise to $5 an hour. But what was cool was it was just enough. At the time, God had put us, where that was enough to pay at that moment. 6 months later, I get advanced into it's a long story, but over about a 5-year period, I went from sweeping the floor to having my own division in a mining construction company as an engineer. And each move was a miracle. Each move was a miracle. But the biggest miracle was when Bob Hartman called me up. After God had said, John, I sat down one Sunday after I finally owned my first home. My kids were going to a great Christian school, found a great church. My job seemed to be very secure. And I sat down and said, you know what? I must have the American dream. This must be it. And it was like God said to me, John, don't even think about sitting down here. This ain't it. You are not where you're supposed to be yet, so don't get content in this position. I'm thinking, where did that come from? I mean, and my wife said next to me, said, babe, I truly believe that God just told me that this isn't it. And there's something big happening. She goes, what is it? I said, got me. And all of this time before, there'd be little bands, little Christian bands would come up and call me and say, will you please sing on our album? Will you please, and play with this? And my wife would always go, no. It's not God. And she's got real close connections, so I never argue. Real funny. And Bob goes, no, this is really Bob Hartman, and I just want to know, would you consider singing for Petra? I said, Bob, I haven't sang for 5 years. He goes, all I want to know, are you still a Christian? I said, yeah, I'm a heavy-duty Christian. He goes, good enough. Let's fly down and let's talk. I did. 6 months later, I'm singing in Brisbane for the first time in 5 years. And it was tough. Because remember, for like 3 or 4 years with my old band, I never walked on stage sober. And all of a sudden, I'm walking in front of 6,000 people in Australia, and for the first time it hits me, hold it. I'm sober. Can I even sing sober? And it was scary. And I walked up and blew my throat out after 2 songs, but I sang that first song, and I was sober, and it was great. It was fun. A year later, we got the rough edges, and all of a sudden the ministry was unbelievable. And I have got to see God do so many unbelievable things over so many years. And I'm here to say, we can never shortchange God. Never. Never. We've got to let Him be Him. And us just listen. He's a miraculous God. When He can give somebody like me a second chance, when He can give my family back to me when I went out of my way not to deserve it. That's the God that mankind should be worshiping. Because He's for real. It's not Mohammed, it's not Buddha, it's not the big man in the sky of today. It's Jesus Christ. He's real. He has a plan, and He has a plan for every one of those little kids that you all are here to help support. Those ones that aren't even born yet, but they should be. How dare we allow the murder of those kids? But you all are making a difference. You're coming forward. You're coming forward. That's so cool. It's a total joy to be here. Remember, if I'd let the enemy convince me that suicide was the answer, my 2 kids that were born at the time wouldn't have had a dad, or at least not this one. And my other 2 kids that came later wouldn't be here. And I want you to know they're very much worth being here. They're classy guys. We got to follow God's plan, and that's not killing babies, no matter what.